I'm here back this summer for the holidays, and my dad invited me on the show, and I said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And it just so happens that my son's smartwatch needed a new battery, and I said, "How about I talk about smartwatches for kids in case anyone out there is thinking about getting a smartwatch for a Christmas present or a birthday present or pitching in." Um, I thought maybe I'd share some of my own personal thoughts on smartwatches for kids. So number one, as a teacher, the last two schools I've worked at, smartwatches have been completely banned from the schools. And I know here in British Columbia next year, the smartwatches they're moving towards a ban as well. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, generally, at least at international schools, kids rock up to schools with Apple Watches, which are really, really expensive. And so it doesn't make much sense for a 8-year-old to have such an expensive watch at school that can go missing so easily. But there are other couple of things that make having a smartwatch at school tricky. Things like once when I was working in Beijing, a grade 2 student ended up calling all of the Beijing's emergency response. I don't know if it was on purpose or accident, but they called them, and we had the Beijing fire department, police, and ambulance service all come to our school. And the principal actually went and got the child and marched the child out to the gate to see the parade of service cars that had arrived. I think it was an accident. And then after that, there was no more smartwatches. Smartwatches also have cameras on them. And in this day and age with kids taking pictures and consent and whatnot, it's just a good idea that they're not at school. And they're also a big distraction, especially Apple Watches. They come with games on them. And so as far as the schools are concerned, there are a lot of schools around the world are moving to a complete ban on them. It's tricky for parents though, because I know that parents like to get in touch with their kids, being able to call them, send messages. If I can understand if children have any issues at the school, the parents want to make sure their kids are safe, then I can see like the attachment to, wanting to stay in touch with your child while you're at school. So I guess the first thing to think about if you're thinking about a gift for your grandchildren or whoever with child with a smartwatch is think about like where they're going to wear it, what time of day they're going to wear it. Can they wear it to school? Is it a weekend thing only? And so that would be a good place to start talking with whoever you're buying a smartwatch for. The next one was when we started to look for smartwatches for our son. We didn't really want him to have a smartwatch, but we bought it during the COVID pandemic when we were all doing online learning. And even at 3, our son had online meetings, and we needed structure to our day. So he was often with our nanny, so I needed to keep a schedule of where he needed to be, what he needed to do, because we were all working at home. But I didn't want a smartwatch with any games. That was my number one thing. I don't want any games on my smartwatch. And we didn't want a smartwatch that needed to be charged, because that was just an added level of complexity for us that we just didn't want. So after a lot of research, I found this little watch. It's made by Garmin. It looks more like a Fitbit, but it's a Garmin watch. I think it's called a Garmin Vivo. So this Bluetooths to my phone, or it can Bluetooth to any phone, I suppose. And then it comes with a app that you download. And then there's no charging. It just has one of those little circle batteries that you put into it. But it keeps check of his steps. On the app, if he collects so many steps in a day, it unlocked a chapter of a story, which was kind of fun. So every day we would check his steps and check the app and see and it was a Star Wars watch. So it unlocked chapters in a Star Wars story. The other thing I liked about it was that I could program chores and alarms. So if I wanted him to do several chores, I make a checklist on the app on my phone, and if he did it, then I can click it off and then it gives points. And I could also set alarms, but that was pretty much it. He can't contact friends, there's no phoning, there's no GPS, there's nothing. But he has loved this little watch, especially when we travel, we all compare our steps. The data is sometimes really interesting. I can look at his long range data. Like, we just moved schools. So the other day I was curious. I wonder if he gets the same step count at his new school as his last school. And I was able to look that information up. But this is like, I would say this is kind of halfway between a dumb watch and a smartwatch. But he loved it, and he loved the unlocking the stories. There was incentive to it without without gamifying anything. And there's no games on it, and so it's not a distraction. There are brands of smartwatches out there that kind of fall, I would say, into a middle range smartwatch where it's not open, it's not an open service. So when you get your smartwatch, parents have full control over the contact list. So this is something else to think about, is who is accessing the smartwatch. So I know there's some phones out there that it's only the parent's phone number that can go onto the smartwatch. I've seen smartwatches out there that have degrees of like different levels of contacts that you can choose. Maybe you want 5 contacts, maybe that includes your emergency list with grandparents in it. But children cannot add any contacts, so they can't add their friends. You can get smartwatches that have GPS on them. So if your family, or if you have family, that your child is walking home or beginning to take themselves to soccer classes, that might be option that is helpful. And then I know some smartwatches also, there's a monthly subscription fee, so that again, the data is not out in the world. You're paying a subscription fee for the information to stay private on that. It's a closed circuit. And then there's all the bells and whistles, games. I was just doing a little search last night on the watches, and there's some phones out there or watches that advertise so many games, as like that's what parents want. And there's some watches that just say like a virtual pet. But even a virtual pet, I think there's problems with the distraction piece. And then you get to your Apple Watch, which has everything out on it. But then it's like cost, charging, games. And as far as I know, it's open for contact lists and people to contact you. I don't know what the parent controls are on Apple Watches, but these are all some of the things you'd want to think about before buying an Apple Watch for anyone. And then of course, like you want children to also be able to read and just tell time on an analog clock. So I think what we might do at the moment is this watch is out of batteries. It lasted 2 years without battery change. We might go get him a little cheap watch with some hands to tide us over until Christmas, when we might do the next version up in this watch, which I'm sure our son will be not so thrilled with, but we do want him to be able to read a clock. But I do think smartwatches are really fun, and the step count piece has been something that's been enjoyable for us as a family. I have a Garmin, and so my son and I can even like put competitions with each other between our watches. So that's kind of fun. He says he's met other children at school with the same watch that he can set challenges. I don't know how he can do that, but there's no chatting feature. It's just connecting and competing with their footsteps. And that's it. So I hope if anyone out there is thinking about a smartwatch as a gift, maybe those are some things to think about before you go out and buy, because there are a lot of watches out there. I didn't want to tell you all the brands because you can find those out yourself. But I think definitely the things to look at are cost, the ease of use, like in terms of charging. Does it have games? And then the degree of openness the child is on the digital platforms like GPS, social media, cameras, and do you want those things on your smartwatch? That's it.
Thanks, Jennifer. Can you just remind everyone what the name of that smartwatch is
So
again?
this one is a Garmin Vivo, I think, Garmin Vivo Junior, and they've just come out with a new one. Which is $99 on Amazon, which is a pretty, in terms of the smartwatch cost, I think it's a pretty good deal, especially considering like we've gone through 2 batteries and we've had this watch for 4 years. So it's lasted the test of time, and my son never takes it off. And just in the last 2 months, the strap, there's a little piece of strap that broke off. So he's worn this swimming, he's worn this traveling, he's worn this all over the world, and it hasn't broken down. There's little engraved Star Wars pictures on it that have rubbed off, but he's found it super comfortable. And so this was a really great find. So we'll probably just stick with this brand.
Okay. Thank you so much.